Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Fifth Dimension live video podcast. One of your co-hosts, Matthew J. Haas, and my other co-host is with me, Mr. Dave Schumacher, on this wonderful, hot and rainy, and I don't know, we've had every kinds of weather this Memorial Day weekend. So,
Yeah, it's been finally the first day that's been nice in about 2 weeks here. So this afternoon cleared up. It was pretty nice. So
yeah,
got some work done in the yard. Got a tree stump taken out, ground up. Jen got some flowers planted. So far it's a good weekend.
yeah.
One
We
more
got
day to go. Looking
we
forward to the long weekend.
Yeah, me too. I'm off from work until Wednesday, so it's a nice little mini vacation for me. Um, but it did start to rain a little bit by us, and I think
Hmm.
they're calling for thunderstorms in the area. So if we
Yeah, tomorrow we're supposed to have some severe weather
y-
potentially.
yeah, so if we if the power goes out, that'll be why.
All right.
All right, so well, welcome to the show, everybody. We've had some really interesting topics. So we thought for Memorial Day weekend, we thought a really good topic would to allow our listeners to really get to know me and Dave on the show. So if you guys aren't doing anything, take a gander at our podcast. We're live on YouTube. You just follow Fifth Dimension Radio Show or look up the Fifth Dimension Live Video Podcast on YouTube. Um, Next to the video feed, there's a live chat room. You can ask us questions in the chat room. Subscribe to our show by hitting the little bell at the top right screen of the YouTube channel. You can follow us on Facebook. You can ask us questions on there if you wish. If you want to message us on Facebook, I can get it there as well. Just look us up again on Facebook, Fifth Dimension Radio Show on Facebook. If you wish to call in, there is a way that you can call in. If you have a Gmail account or a Google account, you can go to Google Hangouts and use our email address, which is fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. Again, that's fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. That's a way you can call into our show and ask us questions that way as well. We have Dave will be monitoring the chat room as long and I will as well. Um, but if we get any interesting questions, we'll try our best to answer them best we can. So we thought it'd be cool to kind of do a Q&A, just kind of get to know me and Dave, like who we are and a little bit about our background. Give you a chance to bring up any topics you like to bring up, like like maybe shadow figures or demons or mysteries, urban legends, different hauntings. You want to talk about ITC, VP, anything related to the paranormal. You want to
Mhm.
talk about UFOs. You want to talk about Bigfoot, Yeti, maybe the Loch Ness monster, anything. So there's no topic off the table if you like to, chat with us about anything.
I've been
That's
watching Naked and Afraid. You can ask me what I think of that.
um yeah, and I think there was also at one time they were going to come out with Naked and the Paranormal. I don't know if it ever made it to TV,
Oh,
but
Jesus.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd watch that show.
It's hard enough to see what's going on in Naked and Afraid. I think the green screen night shot would be a disaster.
Yeah, right.
Might make it more watchable, though.
Right. The one thing I want to do, Dave, though, before we get into real good discussions with these topics, I recently put out a disclaimer on our Facebook page because we don't really have a website yet. Maybe one day when our show grows, we'll get a website going where you can get all this great information about our show. But there's some things that have occurred over the last couple of weeks or so, and I thought it'd be important to have a disclaimer for the show, just so that our listeners and our viewers know that our opinions and our views are much different from our guests and listeners that listen to the show. A lot of podcasts and radio shows have different disclaimers like that, and I thought it would be really good just to throw that out there, because we don't have similar views as our guests and listeners, and I don't want people to think that. I mean, we may have similar views as them, but Not all the time, but I just want to throw that out there.
No, and that's fair. And I'd even go as far to say you and I sometimes don't have the exact same view on things, but
Yep,
that's fine. Let's open it up. Let's have a good discussion. Let's keep it professional, and let's just kind of see where it takes us.
yep.
Um, I think it looks like we have 6 people watching. I don't know. That might be a new record. No questions.
Yeah,
So
no,
everybody quiet.
yep. All right. Yeah.
So anyway, you got any questions, Matt? You want to ask me anything?
Uh, uh, what? All right. As far as outside of ghosts and hauntings and stuff, which is our area of expertise, what are some of the things that you're into other than ghosts and hauntings and all that good stuff?
Well, outside of ghosts and hauntings, I have a really big interest in all aspects of parapsychology, which is really the study of anomalies, experiences, interactions that are kind of outside mainstream science right now, or we really don't know how they occur. It includes things outside of survival, which I'll get to, includes ESP, telepathy, precognition, retrocognition, um, other things. That's the information part, the anomalous cognition. That's actually what they start calling it now, is anomalous cognition versus ESP. To make it kind of fit and seem a little more academic, and not that they've come up with a what it is or a term. So the anomalous cognition covers all that stuff, extrasensory perception. And then the other side of it is psychokinesis, so mind over matter, affecting things in the environment. That can also be direct mental interaction on living systems. It can be micro PK, which is more like things, random number generators, effects that you need statistics, which is obviously another big interest for me as well, statistics, which you read any of the papers and some of the discussions I've had with people. I do love statistics. Yes, there might be something wrong with me, but that's okay. I like to look at the world in mathematical models. Then there's macro PK. You might have bigger things like, I hate to bring it up because there's a lot of controversy around Uri Geller, but the spoon bending, that's an example of micro or macro PK. Recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, otherwise known as poltergeist phenomena. So really, those are the other 2 aspects of parapsychology. So it's really, it's studying things that we really don't know what's causing them. There's interactions, there's information transfer that they term anomalous. We don't know what's causing it, but it seems like the data supports there might be something to it. So it's information transfer and affecting the environment, physical objects, or other living organisms. The other big part of parapsychology is survival, and this is actually where the Society for Psychical Research got started in the late 1800s. They started looking at all the mediums, people that were contacting the dead, communicating with the dead, and they started looking into them. And that's kind of how the field developed. And survival doesn't only include hauntings. So, and I see somebody's already
Yeah, we have a couple
asking
of
what is a
people. Yeah.
haunting and how to describe a place, person, thing to be haunted. We'll get to that. Let me finish the bit on parapsychology. So survival is not only ghosts and hauntings. There's actually very little academic work in parapsychology on ghosts and hauntings. The majority of the work these days is done on areas like near-death experiences. You have the entire group at the University of Virginia Medical School Division of Perceptual Studies that they study things such as near-death experiences. Sam Parnia is doing some research in that. He's a medical doctor, an MD. They also look at reincarnation. They looked Dr. Christopher Kerr, which is another medical doctor. He's looking at end-of-life experiences, shared death experiences. So there's this whole area of what we would call survival related phenomena that's not just ghosts and hauntings. And actually, if you look at some of the work being done in some of those other areas of reincarnation, near-death experiences, there's a lot of people with a lot of advanced degrees, a lot of doctorates, a lot of PhDs, a lot of MDs, and they're studying these things very seriously and producing some really good data. So that's kind of my interest there. I do like statistics. And I see one question, I think it's from Melanie. She's asking, besides that, is what's parapsychology? We think I covered. clarify the credentials that are required to be an actual parapsychologist. And Matt, if you don't mind, I'm just going to hit that real quick, and then we'll maybe get into what is a haunting and some of the other questions.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
question.
a parapsychologist, there's certain people, paracelebrities, that are now referring to themselves as parapsychologists,
Yeah,
and I have a problem with that, a
yeah.
real problem with that, because a parapsychologist is a professional, and in order to have the title or to name yourself a parapsychologist, you need one, an undergraduate degree, so a bachelor's of science or a BA. And then after that, you typically would go on and get a master's degree. And then after that, you would probably go on to get a PhD. So you're talking with undergraduate to postgraduate work. Um,
Would you
4
also
years.
throw in psychology in that as well? Would
Yeah.
it
Oh,
like
yeah. I'll mention that. Really, it's 4 years of undergraduate and anywhere from 4 to 7 years of postgraduate work.
hmm
And it's hard to get a degree in parapsychology. What most people do, and you would have to do the majority of this overseas. For example, at the University of Edinburgh, they have a program there, but you would get a degree. Most likely, your master's or your PhD would be in, let's say, psychology, a mainstream science. But your thesis and your research would include a parapsychological topic project, and that's what your dissertation would be. Your master's thesis or your PhD dissertation, that's what you would have to go in front of your committee and defend. So it's a very high standard. It's like any other degree. And, if you get a PhD or a master's in biology or physics or psychology, you have to do research. You have to take the coursework. You have to do the research. You have to have a project. And then you have to defend and write your thesis and your dissertation, which ultimately that usually results in a couple different publications in peer-reviewed journals. So it's not just reading a couple things and saying that you are a parapsychologist or you have a certificate after taking a 4 year program. Um, yeah, you just don't take a class and say you're a parapsychologist or decide that you are a parapsychologist at any given point.
hmm
So, I mean, really, you need to look into it. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy title. It's not an easy thing to get, especially in the US. A lot of people have to go overseas. I think one of the last people who ever got a degree in parapsychology is Lloyd Auerbach, and I think he got it at JFK University, and that was a master's level. So I would look at, Dr. Carolyn Watt at the University of Edinburgh. Take a look at what her background is. Dean Radin technically could be considered a parapsychologist. He does have a PhD. He does a lot of work in parapsychology. So that's kind of what parapsychology is, what my interests are. And, I love everything paranormal. Obviously, I like UFOs, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. I really don't have any level of expertise there.
Right.
But basically, a parapsychologist, you need an advanced degree. I mean,
Sure.
you're an academic. You're an academic with a master's or a PhD, and that's not something easy. And I think if you say you're one of those people and you haven't done that, that really takes away from the people who have done the hard work and spent the time in school and the excessive amount of money and effort to do it. So
Right. Right.
anyway, so Matt, I guess let's see, Thomas Little, he has a couple of questions. Maybe you can start off here.
Sure.
Do you have the chat up?
Yeah, we have
Okay.
Thomas Little asking what is a haunting, and in our words, describe what haunted means. Well, I mean, it can mean a lot of things. We can't prove um a haunting right now. We don't know what a haunting is. A haunting to many people, I think, in my opinion, a haunting is a placeholder, definitely, as far as describing, something paranormal, something that's beyond scientific explanation. But a haunting to me, with the years that I've been investigating, it's got to be multiple levels of different claims, from phantom odors to the sound, audible sounds that aren't normal, as far as like people claim, sometimes they claim their footsteps, rappings, knockings, stuff like that. There could be people seeing apparitions. not full bodied, but sometimes full bodied that walk through walls, which could be, be an example or a classic example of a residual haunting, or a stone tape theory kind of idea, if anybody knows what that's about. But yeah, haunted is multiple things going on and occurring. It's got to be a lot of things to even consider a place to be haunted. You have to
Yeah.
you have to capture solid data and solid EVP, class A EVP, and not just stuff that you can just
Mhm.
mumble and you think you have something, but it's just not like a team can't go into an investigation and just deem a place haunted in one night's investigation. Sometimes an investigation could take several days, could take several months, can take a year, in order to really establish a place to even remotely come close to being haunted. So in my opinion, haunted is should be used loosely, and delicately, because there's just a lot of things that we can't prove by science right now, and that's to me that's what a haunting is.
Okay, then I'll give my 2 cents, but I want to respond to Thomas Little. So he said, so in order to get the qualification in parapsychology, you would have to go overseas. Not necessarily. You could get a degree, let's say, in the U.S. in whatever psychology or neuroscience, but you would get the master's or PhD in that, but you would have to convince your major professor and your committee to allow you to pursue a research project and a dissertation or a thesis on a parapsychological term. So it's possible. It's just they have established parapsychology units over in the UK and other areas where you would get a little more specialized and get people who've actually done a lot more work. So I just wanted to clarify that. There's a lot of books on the topic, so you can look that up. There's a couple parapsychology textbooks. There's the Parapsychology Foundation, the Parapsychological Association. So they have more information on that. So Matt kind of gave us an idea of what a haunting is. To me, a haunting, you look at it and I'm going to speak from the parapsychology standpoint that I always do. So a haunting is typically place centered. So it's around a location. It's repetitive. It goes on. There's a variety of different types of anomalous activity that people claim that have no natural explanation to them. So a haunting is typically around a location. Now, if you're looking at a person, people, it depends on who you talk to and what you read, because some people will say that a person can be haunted. But there's a lot of debate in this, even in parapsychology. Is the person haunted? Is the ghost or apparition there visiting the person and revisiting them? And there are cases and case studies where, they thought a location was haunted. When the people moved, it followed them. And that usually goes on. Another defining characteristic is they go on for a very long time. So then you get into apparitions, which if you look at GM Tyrrell's historical stuff, it might be a post-mortem, it might be a crisis apparition. There's also apparitions of living people that people have reported. The other thing you think about when you talk about people that might be haunted is poltergeist activity, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, which is a term William Roll came up with. The idea there is that there's some sort of internal turmoil and stress, and it's being expressed in a symbolic way by affecting the environment. So that's just a couple quick thoughts on poltergeist, hauntings, apparitions. So there's, like I said before, there's debate within the parapsychology community on what's a haunting and what's a poltergeist.
Hmm.
So they're still, in some respects, trying to define that as well.
Yes,
So that's
and
kind of my quick couple thoughts on it, since Matt covered part of it as well. And
yeah.
one other thing, just if you're really interested in parapsychology, you can take online classes. University of Edinburgh, the massive online course, ParaMOOC, run by Nancy Carlos Alvarado and Nancy Zingron, I think is the name. I've done 2 of those. They're great. So there's opportunities to at least get educated on what's going on there. But again, they don't make you a parapsychologist. I've taken them. I am no freaking way a parapsychologist. Anyway, sorry.
No,
That's
but
it
you have
for
a really good grasp for, what it stands for, and what the credentials are, and you've been studying parapsychology for a really long time. So you have a really good knowledge base on it. So it's a really good in-depth explanation, which is great.
Yep,
Yep.
great. So let's see,
Yeah.
going down the list here, I guess I'll read a
Yeah,
question.
this is a really another good question that I like to answer actually. What determines a Class A EVP? Is this based on established protocols or subjective perspective? Um, well, I mean, it really depends, but to me, a Class A EVP, as long as the protocols are followed, meaning, you if you're using a Faraday cage, if you're trying to establish a controlled environment around your EVP work, which in most cases it's really hard to establish a 100% controlled environment, because you can't, suck out every air vent there is in an establishment that you're investigating. Let's just face it, it's hard to control the airflow where air goes, so you can't 100% control air where air is going. But you can use Faraday cages, Faraday bags. You can try to block out as much RF and EMF around EVP work as much as possible. But if you're asking, specific questions in a certain way where you're not kind of like contaminating the question with a bias, or if you want to call it a bias, but um, a Class A EVP is if you do get a recording and a response to a question, a specific question that's relevant to that question, an answer that's relevant to that question, it's got to be clear with syllables. If you can understand, the syllables, and you can make out a word, or what, even to me, a Class A EVP should have multiple words, or even possibly a sentence, because random words is just kind of hard to say it's an EVP, because random words could be just coming from RF, or other radio signals from around the area. And again, it's really hard to control RF and EMF when doing EVP work. So again, you just got to use your best judgment. And I like what Dave's wife said to me one time in conversation, that there are expensive pieces and non-expensive pieces of equipment where you can determine where radio signals are coming from if you use the proper equipment, and if you know how to use that equipment to even better the chances at trying to get better data at what really good clear EVP, capturing really good EVP.
Okay, so I'll throw my 2 cents in on that one as well. I look at it more as what the a American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena would be, what they would classify it as, or what they're now called the A trans. I'm not really sure, but the classification I was taught was a Class A leaves no interpretation. So, for example, let's say you recorded an EVP, and Matt, I'm not saying anything you said was wrong. I'm just giving you my definition.
Yeah, sure.
What they have typically said, and actually in Parapsychology, a handbook for the 21st century, they talk about the different classes, and to them, the form, at least these people's formal definition, is that it's something that isn't subjective. You can listen to it and you know what it says. It's very clear. Um, so if, let's say, I recorded it, and one of the things I want to have is a listening panel of people who were not there, have no idea what was said or what was asked. They're not primed, they're not biased, and I play it for them. They all should be able to get it. So that's kind of what the AAEVP and A-trans defines. And back in the day in our group, Cindy Heinen, which was kind of our EVP person, that's the criteria she used to go by. Believe me, I'm not saying anything anybody says is wrong here. That's the definition I've been taught. And those are, those are hard to come by. I'm sure Matt. We've all had ones where I've heard it and I'm like, oh, that's perfectly clear. I know exactly what it's saying. And then Matt listens to it and he looks at me like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not what it says. And I may have, led him along and told him what I thought it was to begin with, which is, I primed him. But that's just another definition. But you're right. I mean, having the controls and having the experiment set up appropriately, that is definitely something you have to look at as well. So anyway,
Yeah, and it's really important to control the questioning too, and who's doing the recording as well. You can't have, it's really hard to prove an EVP when you have a bunch of people doing an EVP session. If you have two or three people involved, yes, voices are going to carry, and unless you practice things such as tagging where your voices are coming in, your stomach growling in a very quiet environment, your stomach could sound like a freaking demon on a recorder, and people are going to go, hey, I got a demon recorded on my recorder, but in reality, it was really your stomach growling. So there
yep.
are things, there are things that you can do to control the environment around you as best you can. Now, for me, personally, like what my team tends to do is we really eliminate the group sessions, because if you only have two people doing the questioning, or even one person doing the questioning, and if you have one person doing the questioning and you get a second voice that wasn't even in the room or anywhere remotely near the recording, where's that secondary voice coming from? It's kind of interesting that you're getting something.
Yeah, one of the things when we did a whole lot of EVP work back in the day, when we had a lot of people in our group and we let them explore these ideas, and we still do some of it, not a whole lot. It's pretty strict, but we would run multiple recorders for one. And it was always interesting if you had something show up on one or not another. There's actually some studies out there where people have gotten recordings on just one channel and not another channel. Um, the one very key thing though, and it's so important, is if people are there, you have to be very strict about marking noises, or if somebody has a stomach grumbling, or hell, if somebody farts. I mean, they could think it's a demon if you don't know what you're doing. So you have to control your conditions. And while I will agree that is difficult in some situations, it is not impossible. It can be done.
Hmm.
And it's just one of those things that you try to do your best at. And one of the really interesting things our group ended up doing for a while is we would run a very high quality analog recorder as well, in addition to the digital recorders, because we were finding that certain digital recorders would pick up something, and then you wouldn't hear it on another one, and then you found out it was actually the audio to digital conversion or compression that was making up these sounds. But then when you went and listened to this really high quality analog recorder, it was somebody mumbling or somebody taking a breath. So I'd have to say, when we instituted a very strict protocol, about 99% of the EVPs we were getting kind of went away. We still had some that were interesting, but not as many as before. So let me see. Let me just answer any other EVP questions to get this done with. If someone spoke, Kenny's asking, if someone spoke and you didn't notice it, it could pass as an EVP if you didn't notice someone talking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's happened. It's happened to us. If an EVP is played for people and there's not a consensus, it would therefore not be classified as an A. Not based on the definition I gave, but that doesn't mean others would not agree with me. So that's my definition. All right, Matt, I have dominated answering and picking questions, so I'm going to leave it up to you, man.
Yeah, no, I want to get back into a little bit with EVP, because it's just EVP really interests me, because there's a lot of people that put out really good data, and really good EVPs, where it's like, if you do have a really good controlled environment going on and you have your controlled variables in place, and like you said, you get a response, you know, it's so hard. I mean, we can't prove we're communicating with the dead. We can't. We can't say that we're communicating with a ghost. We can't say we're communicating with a spirit. we don't know what we're really communicating with. We don't know because we can't say for sure what this is. But what fascinates me about EVP is that we're getting something, we're getting some kind of response. And that it's like, to me, what is the answer to that? Like, what is the responses that we're getting? Like, what is communicating with us? Whether, you know, what are the odds of RF? When I say RF, I mean radio frequencies or radio stations. What are the odds of a radio station answering that specific question, especially if it's so clear that you could hear how clear that response is?
Oh,
Did I
okay.
lose you?
Nope. I had you. I think, yeah, it went blank for a second on my end, so I don't know. So I guess it's a good question that came up is again, Kenny, and there's some other questions there I'm going to let Matt address. I'm not going to bring them up, but you can address them if you want to, Matt. If you can't control the environment 100%, why are you dwelling on unreliable data? Um, I'm going to say yes, that's possible. There's a lot of times that you can't control it 100%, but depending on the data you're collecting, EVP is tough, obviously, but you need to be a better investigator and a researcher then, and you need to control your conditions better. If you have a team that's not listening to you, and you have a team that isn't controlling the conditions or shout or calling out things or noises, you need to crack down on them. That's just the way it is. That's how it is. That's how you collect good data. Now, if you're talking about EMF data, there's ways to actually use the baseline that you collect over time to find a frequency distribution, looking at probability models that you can use that to determine if um, if it's actual meaningful data. One of the things I think we talked about in the last show is if you run your equipment for a very long time, it's not a controlled environment, but you can collect good data because if you run it over a very long time and you know what your average is and you know what your standard deviation is, then you can link certain deviations above that, like 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. That might be meaningful, especially if it correlates with something. So, by my background, my official training is biology and specifically molecular biology, which is a lot of that is in the lab. And the job I do now, there's a lot of field biology. So we can't control every condition out in the environments. The way you deal with that is you control it the best you can, but then you define the variables, both dependent and independent, that you're going to manipulate and measure, and make sure you have a big enough sample size and your statistics support your hypothesis or resolution. So I'm not buying in that field work is not good data because it happens in a variety of different instances: sociology, biology, um, astronomy. These are things that they're field studies. So there are ways to get around it and really study it and do a good study. So anyway.
Right. I'm gonna take a minute here, Dave, just to intervene what's going on in the chat room because quite frankly, whether this be professional or not, you may not agree with what I'm about to say, but you know, I had enough of this bullshit that's going on out there. And if you guys want to listen to ideas and listen to the show, listen to the show. If you guys don't like the show, don't listen to the show. You don't have to listen to the show. If you don't like my ideas, don't listen to my ideas. If you don't like how I work, move on. Okay. If you don't like the show, move on. Okay. Don't come in here and start shit with me and my colleague here and my co host because I see what you're doing. Okay. So I gave you plenty of opportunity to clear the air with me, pick up the phone and call me. And I'm sorry I lost it. I had enough, Dave. I had enough. These,
You know what, that's if you want to deal with it like that, that's, that's your choice. You know me, Matt, I love a good conversation.
I know.
But, yeah, I mean, I can answer any questions anybody wants. And the one thing I'd ask is, if we're going to ask questions, yeah, definitely just keep it respectful and professional. And I really think we can answer questions in that manner. They
Yeah.
can be asked and they can be answered in that matter as well.
Right.
So, I mean, that's how the field gets better. Um, yeah, calling somebody a dipshit, or you're full of crap, that's not acceptable.
No.
But if it's legitimate questions, and we can answer them. I mean, but Matt, you do. I get it. I understand. And if things are causing problems, and you're the host of the show, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna condone or defend anything, and I'm just here to have a conversation. And if people want to ask me questions, I'll answer. Matt, if they ask you questions, you can answer, and we'll just take it from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with Dave 100%. Again, I apologize, but um be respectable and be professional, because if you're not, I'm not gonna respond to it. So if you have a legitimate question, I'll answer a legitimate question. But if it's in regards to any of that BS, I'm just not gonna respond to it. So, this was a Q&A to get to know me and Dave, and I'm just letting you know this is a show that's about the paranormal. It's a show about discussions. It's a show about, different topics of the paranormal. This isn't about, bashing the host. This isn't about bashing Matt because you don't like Matt, or, this and that. So, if you don't like me, like I said, don't listen to the show then. Move on. Okay. So we're here to do the show. We're here to do a really good podcast, and we're not going to get into this childish behavior that's going on. So that's all I have to say with that. So
Yeah,
if you have a legitimate question, ask the question, and let's move on with the show.
and I'll answer any questions just to put it out there.
All right. So anyway, one of the things that really fascinates me, Dave, is near death experience. Um, I think with the research that near death experience researchers that are doing as far as that field work with patients and hospitals, and collecting the data from examining the patients that are involved with their stories and the interviews that take place. I find that kind of research in this field really, really amazing, because with all this stuff that's going on in the paranormal community right now, with all the gadgets we use, with all the methods we're currently using, we are getting the same results over and over and over. And like, I bring up the near death experiences because I think like that portion of the field, I think, is going a lot further than kind of where we are today with the paranormal, and quite frankly because of the BS we just dealt with in the chat room. So, that's just a prime example of why the paranormal community doesn't get along.
I think the difference that I'm going to point out, and it might sound harsh, is if you look at the people who are doing the NDE, or the near death experience research, these are people that are PhDs, they're medical doctors, and they're looking at it from a very scientific and objective matter. There's always going to be some subjectivity. I'm not going to say there isn't, and there's always going to be some level of bias, because there is. But these people are elevated to a point where they they are looking at it academically. And when Sam Parnia or Ian Stevenson or Bruce Grayson, some of the great names in near-death experience research, when they're collecting, they come up with a hypothesis. They set up an experiment. They collect data, and they interpret and discuss the data and their hypothesis based on the data they collected. And then when they go to publish, they publish in peer-reviewed referee journals, which is, I'm going to tell you, it's a brutal process. They will rake you over the coals. And Jen and I've been through that, and it's not pleasant. But I think the one thing is, it never becomes personal. it's never personal. It's always professional. It's always about the information and the data. However, I'm looking at it as it's at a higher, at a higher level. To be quite honest, it's a scientific. They're looking at it scientifically, and they don't have a bunch of people running around who watch TV shows and think that's the way you do things. That they just don't have that. And I gotta say, back in the day, um, talking to some parapsychologists, even Lloyd Auerbach, he tries to ride that fence between maintaining the popular circuit and doing and being credible. Quite frankly, a lot of people are just tired of the crap. There's a lot of it out there. There really is. Um, it's a lot of garbage, and unfortunately, that's really marred the field. And the other thing with ghosts and haunting is there isn't a whole lot of professional parapsychological research in that area right now either. There's some, but not a lot, and it's being left up to people who, quite frankly, man, it's questionable. You've seen the shows, Matt. I mean, you know what they do. It's tough. But the whole idea of the near death and reincarnation stuff is these are people at medical schools. They're at universities. They got advanced degrees, and they follow the scientific method and the protocols, and they come up with hypotheses, and based on the data, they accept or reject it. So I think there's a big difference there, and it's one of the areas that I'm really starting to get drawn to because I like the level that it's at, and the stuff that they're producing and getting is really really interesting, fascinating, and meaningful. So anyway, that's just, I don't know. I got on a rant there. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Time
No,
for a beer.
I went on rant, and again, my apologies for that. I don't normally, that's not my character, but sometimes like there's only so much I could take, and I'm like right up to here with some of
Mhm.
that crap. So it's just
Yep. So
anyway.
I'll pick another question here. Let me see, and then I'll let you start answering.
Yep.
Let's see. So I think we talked about all the hauntings. Um,
I want to ask.
okay, so let me ask this one, and then Jen's got a question. We were talking about ITC and testing it. You said your goal is to test in a haunted versus a non-haunted location. I think they just want you to elaborate on that a little bit more. That's actually a good question. I think that's an interesting question.
Okay. Basically, I'm just really getting into an ITC statistical analysis of ITC. You know, has this been covered before? Yes, but I feel there's a need for a more updated version of a statistical analysis, and we do have multiple investigators and teams involved in the project. We're doing experiments in haunted locations and non-haunted locations. Well, I shouldn't say haunted locations. I should really say alleged haunted locations because we can't prove they are haunted. But if there are claims in haunted locations, we're going to conduct the project at a place that claims to have activity. So maybe I should make that more clear as far as that aspect. But yeah, but just note that this is going to be more of a statistical analysis of ITC, such as EVP, ITC apps, Spirit Box apps, like the Echovox, which is really popularly used right now in the paranormal community. There's different variations of the Spirit Box. You have the SB7, you have the SB11. You have now like the portal, you have the mini portal. There's like all different kinds of ITC devices being used. Um, we're not going in with the bias that we're trying to prove that the phenomena exists. We're just trying to show the statistics that there's something there that should be further studied. And then we're trying to have as much controlled variables as possible with different experiments, and we're being careful with how we're asking the questions, who's doing the questions, like we talked earlier in the show with the EVP and whatnot. So I don't know. Was that pretty clear, Dave? Or
Yep, no, that's clear.
okay,
Um, so Jen has a question to lighten the mood,
okay.
and it's actually a question one of our chat room people, Kenny. Does he ever take a picture without his face in it?
Oh, Kenny, I love you.
Anyway, we had to ask that one. So anyway, I'm sure that'll get a response.
Hmm.
Let's see. Getting serious again. What claim do you have to something being haunted? I understand the dictionary version of what haunted means. B, uh, B, we as a community seem to have people use that word loosely. Um, yeah, I would. I would say a lot of people say everything is haunted. Objects are haunted.
Yeah.
People are haunted. Places are haunted. Demons are haunting areas. Um, e- hell, it's really hard because it is such a loosey goosey definition. But what I would do is I would encourage people, like I do every freaking show, is to read a little bit in parapsychology and try to understand what the definitions they have come up with. Because honestly, those definitions are the result of work from the 1800s. So that's what we should be looking at. We both Matt and I kind of talked about that, and if that's what you're really looking at, and some people claim their house is haunted. There's a lot of it. It's basically, to me, it comes down to the most people think it's just anomalous activity or things that are happening that they can't explain. Objects might be moving, doors might be closing, weird smells, seeing things. I mean, Matt, you've had a whole bunch of people report different types of supposed haunted properties. I mean, what are some of the other things they report to you?
As far as claims, other than
Yeah, what claims are associated with hauntings? Because there's a book called Poltergeist by Gold and Cornwell, and they look at basically doing a whole bunch of different statistical stuff of different characteristics of poltergeist and hauntings, and they see two distinct types of phenomena. But we being in the field and getting these calls, I mean, what kind of stuff are you hearing and seeing?
I'm getting all different kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm getting stuff like what you kind of touched on a little bit, like, with the parapsychology where they study that humans can be haunted. But we kind of like researchers kind of tend to lean on that being called like a spirit attachment. So we run into a lot of times people that think they have a spirit attached to them, other than the house, having activity. So sometimes the activity just kind of is around that person and only that person. And I kind of call that a human haunting. But I ran into situations where it's not necessarily ghost phenomena, but it's kind of like the person is going through a traumatic, stressful time in their life, and they're projecting or manifesting their own activity through their imagination, because their stress level is so great. And we all discuss in the field that we all kind of have a little ESP, we all have a little telekinesis, we all have that, psychic ability in us. Some are more open than others. And so sometimes I run into people who are more sensitive and more open to other people. So therefore, they could be a magnet because of that. But other claims I run into are phantom odors, just weird smells that just come about for no apparent reason, like flowery smells, and there's not even a flower anywhere remotely nearby them, and they smell like perfume, like flowery perfume. um, they've smelled cigar smoke, even though nobody's allowed to really smoke anywhere these days. So they're like, you can't smoke in here. So where's the cigar smoke coming from? Um, you know, things like that I've run into. Footsteps, the sound of footsteps, from above or below or in the same room. They know they're by themselves. They're hearing footsteps. They're hearing voices, disembodied voices, which is different from EVP. Disembodied voices are voices that you hear with your own human range, your own human hearing range.
Hmm.
That stuff you hear with your own ears.
Hmm.
A lot of disembodied voices. What else am I running into? People being scratched, being physically harmed. I've had a lady that had, just for no apparent reason, get a puncture wound in her breast. I did try to make sure there was no physical abuse going on, which there's definitely, there was none of that going on whatsoever. But people have claimed to be scratched, pulled off the bed physically, all kinds of things. I mean, I just can't. I can't keep count.
So, okay, somebody said, who should the main or master to collect the data that everyone has? Who should collect that information? Who should hold it? That's what in science, other areas, even in parapsychology, uh, the people who should collect it is everybody should collect it and they should present it. It should be on a minimum on your website, and all of the information, not just the positive, the negative, and within the context. So if you have an EVP, we're back to EVP. I don't know why I brought that up, but anyway, you should those should be isolated at first, so we can see if we all agree on what it is.
Hmm.
But at a bare minimum, this stuff should be on people's websites. And as you branch out and you want to become professional and you want people to accept this and you want people to take a hard look at it and criticize it, um, um, it should be published. That is what the scientific community does. If you look at biology, that yeah, there might be or entomology, there might be some big databases, but the collective knowledge of the entire entomology field is in those academic journals. And that's why it's not easy. People spend a lifetime studying a certain field and they become experts in it because they gain that knowledge and they process it in themselves. Now, would the paranormal field at this point benefit um, at this point of having a spot to collect all that? Yes. Actually, I mean, Matt tried to have something like that. It was going to be a peer review site where you tried to create a site where people would submit all their evidence and it would be a collection, but it would also be an area where people could comment on it. I think the problem is, and I'm going to be completely honest, people in this field are one, protective of their information, two, they don't like to share a whole lot because I think sometimes they feel like it's, oh, I got the edge and that's going to get me a TV show or something. And three, some people don't want to be criticized because and let's be honest, it's their baby. They collected the information. They did all the hard work, and they don't want to be criticized for it. But that doesn't mean there couldn't be a secured site with permission given to store information. I mean, Matt tried to do this at one point. It was a good idea.
Yeah.
And it is actually, Thomas, it is a reason why the field is at a standstill, because I've looked at sites and people are like, oh, we're getting all this good information, we're collecting all this data, and you go to the site and it's like, well, what the hell is it? But I think the field, yeah, I agree, because the field is not publishing and putting it out there in published repositories, journals, or professional meetings, that, yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have a site that would collect all this stuff and hang on to it. I think it would be a benefit to the field. And I will say that Matt tried to do that at one point, and nobody was interested. So
Yeah.
I guess the question back to Thomas, I'm going to reverse this a little bit, is how do you do that? How do you get people to do that?
Yeah, because let's face it, like the first thing I want to bring up, because you brought up a really good word in what you were saying, Dave. Permission. You got to be careful with what information you do share if it was peer reviewed in a publication, because you want to make sure you have that permission, that you're sharing that personal information of that location. Because um, let's face it, you know, it's hard to prove, interesting phenomena as it is, and I think people are really afraid to share their information because there's a lot of extreme skepticism out there, and there's a lot of extreme criticism going on with what people should do or not do, and they're really afraid of taking their work public and getting heavily criticized over their hard work. And I think that's one reason why a lot of people don't share their information. And not only that, and what if you
We
I
can
would
make
want
it
to
anonymous. Maybe we can make it anonymous.
yeah, we thought of that too. We thought of anonymous review, peer review as well. We thought of every aspect of peer review there is in order to try to boot the whole peer review organization that I had thought up of a
Sorry.
couple of years ago. I just couldn't get nobody on board. It was a great idea.
Yeah, nobody wanted to sign up, but maybe it's not something that should just be dead. Somebody would try to revise it. But yeah, I mean, collecting the data, and I would even be for, and I don't know if this is what Thomas is talking about. Remember, it's about collecting data, what they use, how they did it. Well, yeah, that would, to me, that would be definitely be part of it. Is you would have to provide, like they request in a journal article in the material and methods, enough of a description of the equipment you used and the process that you followed to collect the data, so anybody could reasonably recreate it or collect the same data. I think we need to elevate it. We need to have a collective place, but we also need to um, really focus on that and focus on how things are collected and the standards by which they are collected. Oh, hey, oh wow, hey, Tim Vick, I think is in here. Paranormal Warehouse set up data sharing peer review site. Huh? Did they? I don't know. Matt, are you aware of that?
We tried to, but I don't know if he's still stuck with it or not. So
Is that
I
the one? Is that the one you were talking about with those guys? And they did it. They set it up. That's the group, right?
hmm
But I don't think anybody populated it.
no.
Nobody was submitting anything. Maybe we need to market that a little better.
Well, it definitely should be done. I think
So I
it
guess my
would
question for Tim is, I mean, if they've done that, is there data there that people can look at? I mean,
yeah,
who has this information and how much is there? Because believe me, I would love to get my hands on some of that. I really would.
I know he said several did.
I know
Yeah.
some people do put the information. I'm not arguing with Tim and Thomas, and there are websites, and okay, maybe Tim has submitted some stuff. I'll have to go back and look at Paranormal Warehouse, but I would have to say, unfortunately, the majority of people do not. And when Matt tried to do it, the majority of the people were not interested, which is
Okay.
a real shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good
It's a
initiative, and it just
movement.
never happened.
Yep.
And I got to say, even before that, Lloyd Auerbach tried to create a group that would set standards for the field on how to collect information and how to do investigations. Unfortunately, that was over 10 years ago. That fell flat on its face too.
hmm
So, I mean, the honest question is, are people really interested in moving the field forward, or are they there just for their own interests?
Just look.
Yeah. I
There's a question for you, Matt. I'll
well,
ask you a question. Are
okay.
people in it for their own interests, or are they really trying to move the field forward?
I think there's very far few in between as far as those who are really into moving the field forward. And I think there's the majority of the people that are just in it for their own interest. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. I just think there's more personal interest in it than there is as the field as a whole. I think there's more personal agenda, and I don't think everybody. There's just not enough people to be on board to make the field go forward as much as like people like me and you or the people that were trying to get the peer review thing up and running, the people that were on board with that. There's just like I said, there's far few and in between. I think there's like compared to because the paranormal is global, like everybody in the whole world is into the paranormal. You got people in all different countries participating in the paranormal community. But I would have to say, like, there's probably, you could disagree with my percentage, but I would have to say, like, 15% out of the entire world is probably interested in moving the field forward. I could be wrong with that percentage, but that's just my own personal opinion.
Um, I would probably say it's less than that.
Okay. I
I'm gonna
set high expectations,
say
I guess.
5% if it's lucky. I mean, if people put stuff out there, definitely post it. Um, and put the link on this show. I mean, put the link on the Facebook page. Put the link on my page, or put the link on our paranormal research group page, or put a link on anywhere else, or send it to Matt and I. Email it to us. I mean, these are things that, if you have information and data and you want people to see it, we want to help you get it out there, because I think getting more eyes on it is a good thing.
Hmm. Yeah, like I said, I always thought it was a good idea, and again, we just didn't have enough people to get it going. I reached out to like multiple groups all across the board, and I just, I even asked hardcore skeptics to be part of the board. We were gonna have a board running this thing, and I thought it would be cool to have, certain people overseeing how it would be ran, so there was no bias looking over that information whatsoever. And also, we thought of the idea of, like we said before, about it being also an anonymous, submission. There was so many aspects of this that we came up with, and I thought were so great. And it's really a shame that it never really went anywhere.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be dead. I mean, it's something that can keep going. And for years we were frustrated by people not wanting to share, and uh, trying to share and get information out there, and it just didn't happen. And we got really discouraged and kind of stepped back. And our group would put a lot of stuff online, with permission, if it was a private home or business, which we don't do anymore for various reasons, and we've discussed that. We try to put the information they would allow us online. We've actually published in trade magazines, peer-reviewed journals. So we've always been good about putting ourselves out there. And people criticize it. They always are, and we're open to that, because I got to say, when I went through the peer review process, or Jen and I did with two of our papers, and me with a couple other ones, it was brutal. But I got to tell you, it made us better people. I mean, it made us better researchers. It made us look at things a lot harder and a lot more carefully, and really to have people look at your stuff and not critique. I mean, yes, critique, but constructive criticism. And sometimes I got to tell you, not even in the peer reviewed journals, some of them just say, yeah, that sucks, and that's not going to get in the journal, which to me, and the people that were on the paper with me, Jen and Joey Caswell, they're like, yeah, that is not helping us. We're trying to figure out how to make this paper better. And when you find a journal with reviewers that do that, it makes it a lot better. So the field needs to grow. Things need to change. That's obvious. And we just need to be really upping it, stepping up our game, and becoming better at what we do, and sharing information. It's
I
pretty
think
simple.
I think the other thing what's going to help move the field forward too is it needs to become more advanced. Just like we discussed with the NDEs, and how certain parts of that are more advanced than the paranormal where it is today. I think it needs to be more advanced. I think more, more degrees and more things. Have people have more psychology degrees, or whether it be maybe the younger generation will start having PhDs, involved in the paranormal community in the near future. Who knows? But we need more advanced stuff, going on, because we're getting the same results over and over and over, and for myself, I'm an old timer. I've been around a little while, and even for myself, it's like, what do we do with this information? What are we doing with it? And it makes you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. Where do you go from here? You know what I mean?
where do you go from here? And we got to take those next steps. And I think getting people to work together and to have good constructive dialogue and understanding our shortfalls and actually understanding what we're good at, applying what we're good at and what's getting results. That's one thing to move forward, but also understanding what we're not doing so well. And I think we've identified a lot of those issues between this show and the last one. And there's things we just need to do better. You know, we all need to dialogue, and we all need to talk, and we all need to work together. And I know I've brought this up in some comments and some other things, but you know, one of the things that that was brought up in a reprint, a free issue of the Journal of Parapsychology recently, it was like an 80th anniversary edition, and they reprinted one of the historic dialogues between Charles Honorton, which was a parapsychologist and very, of course, pro parapsychology and psi, and Ray Hyman, which was a huge skeptic. But they well, not but at this point they were head to head. They were, oh man, your data stinks, it's flawed. And Charles Honorton was like, oh no, it's good, it's solid data. So what ended up happening is, which was impressive, is they came together and they said, okay, bashing heads and calling each other names and critiquing the data left and right isn't helping. So guess what they decided to do? Let's sit down together and set the standard and the protocols together to something we both would agree to. And guess what happened? They did that. The information got better. And actually, on the skeptical side, Ray Hyman, he looked at it and said, I will admit that there is something here. And it can't be explained as being just a chance finding. So there's hope. There's ways to come together. It can be difficult, but I think even within the field, the paranormal investigators have to come together first. And we need to be open to talking and getting outside of our comfort zone. It's hard to do, but anyway, that's my ramblings on that topic.
Yeah. A little insert with that. I tried doing that. I tried doing that today more than one time. So they weren't interested, and they, you know, hey, it is what it is. So anyway, we're down to the bottom of the show again. I apologize for the beginning of the show. There were some people not being too professional earlier on, so I had to deal with that. Anyway, we'll make for a better show the next show, I promise you. You know, we'll be more on our feet. Dave, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take my last thought, and I'm gonna answer Thomas's question. Investigation request questionnaire. Do you use one? Yes. Back when we were doing investigations, it was over 100 questions, initial ones, to get a handle on the phenomenon, what people were reporting, what was going on. But we also used published and validated question sets out of the psychological and parapsychological literature to get at things like fantasy proneness, ambiguity, tolerance, transliminality, anomalous experiences, paranormal belief. So we would do that, and there's actually official ways to rate them. So what you got is a view of not only what was potentially going on, but also a really good idea of how they interpreted potentially an anomalous or ambiguous situation. So yeah, we use one. So I think my last comment is, you know, we just need to come together across the board, both paranormal people, both we need to dialogue and interact with skeptics. We need to all have a professional, constructive dialogue. And that's how we're going to move the field forward. We have to share information, and we need to just work together to make the field better, because obviously we all know it has problems. And I'm just going to one last thing. Tim says, do you think the average team has the qualifications to administer and score that? I'm going to be blunt at this time, no, but I learned it. I studied it. I reached out. People taught me. You can learn that. We never did anything that would make us or would imply we were psychologists or psychiatrists. It was all for research. So I would say, no, they don't have those skills right now, but I didn't either. Okay, Thomas, you're right. Some do. I apologize. Some do, but I think the majority do not. But on the other hand,
They can learn it.
they can learn it. They can absolutely learn it if they want to, and that's the key. You can be in the field for 10 plus years, but unless you have the want to learn and get better, not going to happen. But I think I'm positive. I really think people can get better and can learn. But anyway, that's it. It's out there. It can be learned. And again, I think we just we got to keep talking. This was good dialogue. So thanks.
Yeah. All right, guys. We're at the bottom of the show. I'm sure we'll be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. Hope you guys enjoyed the majority of the show. Thanks for all the questions, and I hope we answered them as best we can. Maybe we should do more of that in the future, hopefully. And just follow us on Facebook, Fifth Dimension Radio Show on Facebook, Fifth Dimension Radio Show at gmail.com is how you can send us email. And don't forget to subscribe to our show with that little bell at the top right corner of the screen on our YouTube channel. You can get all our up-to-date information on Facebook on who our guests are and what our upcoming topics will be. Thank you all for participating in Q&A today, and I hope you all enjoy a great Memorial Day tomorrow. One last thing, I do want to just put a shout out to all our veterans out there. I don't want to forget making the mention to all those who sacrifice. I totally respect our troops and just want to say thank you to serving our country and can't forget those who have fallen for our freedom. And, that's one of the things that made Memorial Day. So, thank you to our troops.
Yep, I totally agree 100%. And it's nice to have time off with the family and enjoy a day off. But we got to remember that people have given the ultimate sacrifice, and we need to remember that these are the people that protect and defend us, our freedoms, our country. And I have the utmost respect and love for those people, and I appreciate everything they've done. So thank you.
Yeah, I do too. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you for all you do. All right, so guys, great show, and Dave, I'll talk to you after the show. And
All right.
yeah, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, everybody.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay.